Good morning, class. So the topic I have chosen for this assignment is something that has been very near and dear to me my entire childhood and carried on into my adult life. And that topic is pro wrestling. Professional wrestling is very popular here in the United States and also very successful. And also throughout the world, not just here in America. So, professional wrestling got its start in traveling carnivals during the post Civil War era of the mid 1860s. Now, professional wrestling was not always what it is today. It actually began as legitimate competition. The wrestlers in the beginning were actually trying to defeat each other. But over time, they began to drift away from this. Grand circuses added these performances into their shows. They gave the wrestlers colorful costumes and added fictional background stories to the wrestlers. And this proved to be very entertaining. And that's how we began to drift away from the actual wrestling competitions. Now, the golden era of professional wrestling began in the 1950s. With the addition of television, professional wrestling was now viewable by an even larger fan base. This led to a huge resurgence in professional wrestling. Also, during this time period, a superstar emerged for the first time. His name was Gorgeous George. He was an over the top, flamboyant character. He would walk to the ring, which at the time was very strange for a man, and get sprayed with perfume and have somebody fix his hair and all these other things that at that time period were not acceptable for a man. And this led to him being very hated by the crowd, which was his purpose, by the way. This also brought along other outrageous over-the-top characters, such as since World War II was not too long ago, the 1940s, and here it is the 1950s, they begin to add in the evil German characters. The evil ethnic characters began to play a huge part in professional wrestling and proved to be very successful and very entertaining and very popular. Now, after the 1950s into the 60s and 70s, professional wrestling began to slow down and plateau. It wasn't as popular as it was. And that was until the 1980s when professional wrestling again saw another boom and surgence in popularity. And because of this, one wrestler and one promotion was responsible. And that is Hulk Hogan, who I'm sure everybody has heard of. He's almost a household name. And the World Wrestling Federation, the WWF. Now, during the 1980s, professional wrestling, the World Wrestling Federation, teamed up with MTV, music television, which at that time was also extremely popular, and brought professional wrestling to heights it had never seen before. And this was called the Rock and Wrestling Connection. Now, Hulk Hogan and Cyndi Lauper are very responsible for this. Also, there was a pay-per-view added, which was also the Super Bowl of wrestling, called WrestleMania. It proved to be very successful on pay-per-view and very successful attendance-wise. This also carried on into the early 90s, which began to plateau again, until the rise of another superstar, Stone Cold Steve Austin, which was the mid to late 1990s. And he brought along a lot of outrageous behavior, swearing, drinking of alcohol, which had never been seen in professional wrestling before, and this brought another surgence into professional wrestling. Now, why is professional wrestling so popular among viewerships? It has to do with all the action and over-the-top characters and storylines. All the color, the crazy interviews, just seems to reach people. It's just so fascinating for people. It's an escape from their daily lives and all the stress that is brought from work, and you just get behind the television, turn on these professional wrestling programs, and you're just hooked. Now, a lot goes into these performances. I know a lot of people think it's fake, and in a way it is. They aren't actual competitions, like a boxing match when they're really trying to defeat each other. They are working together to entertain the audience. So I understand where that comes from. But their bodies do take a lot of abuse. Night after night, they're getting slammed down onto that hard wrestling ring, which is basically just a level of plywood and some foam to protect their falls. It's really not that much when you think about it. And they're doing this day after day in a different city every night. It's not always on television. They have these matches in arenas all across the United States and the world. And a lot goes into these performances. They talk backstage on what they're going to do out there. There's a lot of work in a professional wrestler's life. They have to go to the gym every single day, maintain their bodies. They have to read from scripts to make sure that their performances are reaching the audience and that they're not messing up what they say, since the performances are live. Now they have to make sure they have a great look. They have to go, like I said, to the gym. They have to make sure their skin is tanned and all these sort of costumes and crazy over-the-top characters. It's a lot of work. Professional wrestling is not as easy as it looks. So I hope you all enjoy my little informative speech about professional wrestling and what goes in and out day to day of these performances. It's very, very, very entertaining, over the top, and that's just a little look inside the life of professional wrestlers.